Now, hip-hop in 2019 has been kind of eventful. Is that something you would agree with? You probably will. We've seen countless of rappers blowing up, countless of rap songs blowing up, a lot of different situations have taken place, a lot of interesting conversations have been started, but if we had to summarize this entire year of everything that's happened in 8 of the biggest moments, what exactly would that look like? Well, let's start with number 1. Soulja Boy. I bet you saw that one coming. This was hands down the first biggest event that happened in hip-hop this year. It all, of course, went down in January when Soulja Boy pulled up to the Breakfast Club for that interview where the iconic Drake moment went down. Even though this was the most entertaining part about this whole thing, you know, Soulja Boy calling out Drake in such a funny way, a very important conversation started because of this. How much exactly has Soulja Boy contributed to hip-hop? That's exactly how my Soulja Boy's Not Lying video came to mind. Yeah, Soulja Boy captivated the whole internet with his humor and charisma, but most importantly of all, his influence on hip-hop got recognized by everyone. And the thing about this is, there was a whole bunch of people who had no clue that Soulja Boy played a huge part in the evolution of the genre. Soulja Boy was the first rapper to utilize social media in a way where it propelled his career significantly in the days where the internet was a foreign thing to most artists in the music industry, meaning there wasn't really a blueprint on how to go on about boosting your career with the help of social media. Also meaning Soulja Boy was one of the pioneers of how to leverage social media as a rapper, or to keep it real, as a musician, period. I mean, after all, he did become the first artist, okay, not just rapper, but artist to get 3 million downloads on a digital record. You know how nowadays Drake is the king of streams just due to how big of a name he is? Well, back then, Soulja Boy was the king of digital streams. Soulja Boy was also the inventor of clickbait, you know, kind of, if you've heard the story of how he made Crank That Blow Up, where he manipulated the title on LimeWire, then you know exactly what I'm talking about. I say that to say, one really humorous and memeable moment of Soulja Boy calling out Drake turned out to be the sole thing that brought Soulja Boy's influence in the rap game right up to the surface. It benefited him, obviously, and it also educated the internet, the people, casual hip-hop listeners, on who should get at least some of the credit for how things in the music industry evolved into what it is today. Moving on to the second biggest moment, and by the way, I'm doing these by the month they happened. So for example, Soulja Boy, that happened in January, and then this next one happened in February, so month by month, just so you know. It's not really based on which situation was the biggest. For example, just because Soulja Boy is number 1 doesn't mean that that was the biggest one, if that makes any sense. Just wanted to explain that. But moving on to the second biggest moment, 21 Savage is British. I'm gonna be honest with you for a second, I still can't comprehend that this happened, or the fact that this is an actual thing. Like, how did this even happen? Obviously at this point we know the story behind how all this happened, but I don't think it's ever gonna register in my brain that 21 is actually from the UK. Not only was this one of the weirdest, most plot twist infused, confusing, strangest pieces of news that's ever came to the surface in hip-hop history, but it was easily one of the more memorable moments in hip-hop from this year. The question that started being asked when the news was revealed was, has 21 Savage lied about everything? Everything meaning everything. If 21 Savage is really from the UK, does that mean that when he was rapping about carrying the heat, was he maybe really talking about carrying that British tea straight from the heat instead? When 21 was rapping about the booth, was he instead talking about one of these? When 21 rapped about the gang, was he talking about riding around with these guys right here? All jokes aside, what 21 had in front of him was a very serious situation. He built up this image of this young rapper who came from a very troubled past in Atlanta. Everything people knew about him essentially turned out to be false, at least when the news first hit us. On top of that, he was locked up, not being able to explain himself, and that was the worst part about this.
I've been here 20 years, 19 years. This is all I know, you know what I'm saying? I don't feel like you should be arrested and put in a place where a murderer would be for just being in the country.
As more information started to pour in, it later got confirmed that 21 was actually born in the UK. He legally arrived in the United States at the age of 7, but for reasons that he couldn't control, his visa later expired, and that's why the US Immigration and Customs Enforcement decided to arrest him. With all this being said, at the end of the day, Atlanta was the only thing 21 knew. He spent almost 20 years in America until he got arrested. I think this fact really helped him preserve his credibility, because you gotta keep in mind, a lot of people were coming out the woodworks calling him a fraud. Him being from the UK was a part of a story that he never really brought up after all, and that's why so many people started pointing fingers at him. It's safe to say that that whole incident never actually hurt his career though. 21 is still prospering, he's still winning, he's still giving back to his community, which is a good thing to see. But again, I can't even lie, I still can't comprehend the fact that he's from the UK. I mean, it still hasn't hit me. Crazy stuff, right? Crazy, man. Anyway, let's move on to the third biggest moment, which is YNW Melly gets arrested for allegedly killing both of his best friends. Now, Twitter went absolutely crazy on this day. I remember that. The murder on my mind memes started to flood in, which is understandable. I mean, this entire situation was a complete mind. Of course, he still hasn't been convicted of anything, so let's not get ahead of ourselves and say that he's guilty. I 100% stand by the innocent until proven guilty principle. But YNW Melly was accused of a crime that seemed unrealistic in a way. The police's conclusion was he murdered both of his best friends and staged a crime scene like it was a drive-by shooting. I think the fact that we're talking about YNW Melly, who blew up off of this song called Murder on My Mind, where he in detail talked about having murder on his mind and then gets arrested for allegedly acting on that murder he had on his mind, made this entire situation very coincidental. Rappers speaking the things they say in their records into fruition, we've seen this happen in a few different cases. The only question we now all still have is, did YNW Melly do it? I guess only time will tell. Moving on to the fourth biggest moment, which is Old Town Road / Lil Nas X. You already know I had to include this one. Lil Nas X is clearly one of the biggest new faces in the entire music industry this year, and Old Town Road was obviously the biggest song of this year. The big moment that I'm talking about though that sparked the success of Lil Nas X was when he got kicked off of the country charts for his song not being country enough. What happened then? Well, the whole internet came together to support the song, and needless to say, Lil Nas X getting kicked off of the country charts was the best thing that's ever happened to him in his entire life. It brought enough attention to the song where the streams were now booming like crazy. The man himself started heavily reaping the rewards, and as of a couple days ago, the song officially got crowned as the most streamed song of all time in the United States. I think Old Town Road and Lil Nas X says something about the internet. When good things deserve credit, we all come together and make it happen. He wrongfully got kicked out of the country charts, and this was the only right thing I'd want to see happen at the end. Moving on to moment number 5, which is the unfortunate death of Nipsey Hussle. A rapper dying, especially at this level and especially so tragically, is always big news. I think if anything, moments like these kind of gives us all somewhat of a reality check. When it comes to death, you don't know when it's gonna happen, and like Denzel Curry said, when I go, I know death don't do apologies. I honestly hated to see Nipsey Hussle go out like that. Even though I wasn't a big fan of his music, apart from a couple songs, I think the things he did for his community were very honorable. I mean, this was an artist who put the people of his city, the people in his block first, and unfortunately in the end, that's exactly what took him away. You know, he literally got gunned down outside of the store he built in his own hood, and all he wanted to do was give back to his neighborhood. Sometimes the things you're trying to help can be the very things that are trying to kill you at the same time, and I think that's something Nipsey Hussle probably never thought about. There's a lot of jealousy out here, man. We saw it happen to X, we saw it happen to Nipsey, and if there's anything I learned from this unfortunate passing of Nip, it's you can be a saint and someone out there will still try to take everything away from you just due to pure hatred. Rest in peace, Nipsey Hussle, man. Let's move on to moment number 6, which is Tay-K is guilty and gets a 55-year prison sentence. The reason why I think this was such a big moment is because Tay-K's entire situation was like a whole movie. Now, obviously, that's not me trying to glorify anything. I'm just looking at it like it is. A fugitive rapper dropped a song called The Race while he was doing the race. The race at the end, of course, turned into the marathon when he got hit with 55 years, but you get the point. For these past 2 years, okay, ever since The Race got released, Tay-K has been so talked about for a reason. This is a once-in-a-lifetime situation that was unraveling in front of our eyes. People have been so invested in this case from day one, and to find out the verdict for that first case he was fighting was almost like seeing the ending of a movie. The movie, for us at least, is far from finished because there's a second case he's gonna attempt at beating where he's pointed out as the shooter, so there's more left of this entire plot. But the fact is, Tay-K's career, okay, his career is over. And earlier this year in July, when his entire fate was revealed, that's when this became one of the more memorable moments that happened in hip-hop this year. Moving on to moment number 7, which is A$AP Rocky getting locked up in Sweden. This entire situation where Rocky brought in so many unexpected people to the mix, one of those people being Trump. Who would have thought that A$AP Rocky getting locked up in Sweden would have sparked up somewhat of a beef between the United States president and the Swedish government? To keep it real, it still feels like something out of a movie, but this entire incident just proved to me that no one is safe. You could be rich, handsome, and a famous celebrity. As soon as you find yourself in a place where the government feels like you've committed a crime, ain't no telling what's gonna happen to you. Rocky, of course, had the benefit of media coverage though, since he is famous. A lot of people, including me, were calling for Rocky's release. Like a lot of people, I still stand on the fact that he didn't do anything wrong. He was not the perpetrator in this case. To be honest, things are never looked at that black and white in the eyes of the court of law, so what I think doesn't even matter at this point. Once again, like in the Old Town Road and Lil Nas X case, when the internet, the people decide to come together for a cause, great things can happen. I think the amount of support A$AP Rocky got while he was locked up made the process of his release even quicker. The Swedish government got heavily criticized and scrutinized for the lack of consideration for Rocky. That of course played to Rocky's advantage though, and after a month of being locked up, he eventually got released. And by the way, I think the ending of this incident was a very positive one, and I haven't seen too many people talking about it. A little over 2 weeks ago, A$AP Rocky actually went back to Sweden, which is something no one thought he would ever do considering the circumstances. Not only that though, he headlined a show and kind of gave away free tickets to the less fortunate people in Sweden. The price of the tickets were like $2 in total, which is of course nothing. That was pretty much his way of giving back. If you ask me, this was a very good move. He turned this very negative and bad experience into bringing his fans together at a fun setting. He could have of course stayed mad at how he got treated by their system, but instead he did something for the people, which I think was a good way to end this chapter. Moving on to moment number 8, which is also the last one, that is the death of Juice WRLD. We just had to end this year with losing Juice WRLD, right? God damn it, I ain't even gonna lie, Juice has been on my mind. It's always sad to lose one of our own, and the worst thing about these situations is they just come like that. But then again, that's life for you, right? This entire thing isn't scripted, it goes down and happens very suddenly. I don't know why, but Juice was the last person I thought we'd lose anytime soon. He had so much potential, bro. He did so much in the short amount of time he was in the music industry. All I'm thinking about right now is how far would have he gotten if he didn't unfortunately go out like that. And that's something we could sit here and speculate about, but at the end of the day, just like Nipsey, Juice's life was cut short when it didn't have to. I guess it'd be like that. I guess it'd be like that. Rest in peace to all the fallen soldiers in hip-hop who won't make it to 2020 with us. Let's celebrate their existence instead of being sad that they're gone. So yeah, here you have the 8 biggest moments in hip-hop this year. It started off very entertaining in January with Soulja Boy. After that, we had 21 Savage with that UK plot twist, and then YNW Melly got caught up in some serious accusations, and then Lil Nas X and Old Town Road took over the internet. After that, unfortunately, we lost Nipsey Hussle, and then Tay-K got the race ran on him. A$AP Rocky slipped on semen in Sweden for about a month, and to end it all, unfortunately, we lost Juice WRLD. As a hip-hop fan, I'm gonna be honest, man, I feel like I've lived at least 10 lifetimes just this year alone, considering everything I've seen happen throughout these 12 months. Is it just me? Anyway, did I miss any big moments? Out of all the ones I talked about, what's your personal favorite? Which one of them had the biggest impact on you? Which one of them was the most entertaining, sad, shocking? Definitely let me know in the comment section below, and let's have a discussion about this.